Oh, is it gonna be a, there gonna be like a video recording of this? Or-
All right, so welcome to Alumni Career Connections. For those of you who aren't familiar with this program, this is the first time it's put on by the Alumni Office, and then also the Fleischman Career Center. We work together to bring alumni back to campus in order for you to learn from them because they were once in your shoes, especially Delaney. She was very recently in your shoes. So with that, I am excited to welcome Delaney. She's actually in Washington State, so being virtual is a really great opportunity because we can pull a larger audience of alumni. She's a 2017 grad of SOM, earned her BS in Business Administration with a focus on marketing. So with that, Delaney, I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah, hi guys. Happy Friday. I'm very excited to be here, but yeah, class of 17, so very, very recent. Yeah, just kind of talk a little bit about what I did at Bing and then kind of my career journey. I'm a social media manager, mainly working for entertainment clients at a social media agency. So yeah, so kind of starting at Bing, I was a marketing major. Didn't really know I wanted to do marketing right away, but kind of once I took like my gen ed, I really enjoyed marketing. So kind of went down that path. And then some organizations I was involved with at Bing was Women in Business. And I was also did WHRW, which has nothing to do with my major, but it was just really fun. You got to kind of meet people from a lot of different majors. But my kind of how I started doing social media marketing is my sophomore year at Bing. My roommate was writing for this like online college magazine that was mainly for women in college. So I started writing for them and they needed some help with marketing. And so I was like, okay, I'm interested, like social media, like I'm on it all day, sure, let's try it. So I did social media marketing for them, for the magazine. I kind of became like the social media director and then had like a little team below me just of college students. I was like, okay, this is really fun. But again, I didn't know too much about it. And I never really thought that social media marketing would even be a career since it's especially such a new field. Yeah, so I did that. And then my sophomore year of school, started applying for internships. I was like, let me just try doing a social media internship. And there was a lot, especially because when I was at Bing, I'm originally from LA. So I went from LA to Binghamton, which everyone's like, why the heck would you do that? But I did. So I was looking at social media internships in LA. And I interviewed for one. It was at like this boutique agency in Beverly Hills. And so it was doing social media for an Andy Warhol gallery. So I accepted that internship. And then a few days later, I heard back from iHeartMedia and they wanted to interview me for an internship and they gave me an offer and I accepted that internship as well. I just decided to have a really crazy summer while also doing college classes so I can graduate a year early. So I did those two internships. iHeartMedia was definitely more fun because I do love entertainment. I always have, and I kind of grew up listening to those radio stations. So there I kind of learned more about like digital marketing and like working at live events, doing Facebook Lives, things like that. And I'm like, okay, like this is definitely what I want to do. I want to go down that entertainment, social media marketing route. Like I love entertainment. This is fun. And then internships really kind of helped be like, okay, this can be a career. So then senior year came, applying for all the jobs. Not going to sugarcoat it too much. The job hunt was definitely a little bit rough post-grad. So I was just applying for jobs and not hearing back, unfortunately. So what I did was I had my friend's mom ran like a small business. And I said, well, I kind of have experience doing social media marketing. Can I do social media marketing for your small business? And so she brought me on. And so I was applying for jobs, just kind of try to keep up with these skills that I learned. I did marketing for her business, and then she kind of connected me with like one or two more of her colleagues. So I did social media marketing for them, which just kind of learned, but so that was kind of good just to kind of keep those skills fresh. And then in September of 2017, so a few months after I graduated, I got an interview at BuzzFeed. And so I had been applying for them. I applied for probably like 10 jobs at BuzzFeed. It was like one of those dream company scenarios. And I never thought I'd actually like get an interview. But they gave me an interview, and then I came into the office. It was to work as an intern on their lifestyle brands. So Tasty, Nifty, and Goodful, if you're familiar with BuzzFeed at all. So they hired me. So I was a social media intern for 3 months, mainly working on those lifestyle brands. And then after those 3 months, that 3-month contract was over, they kind of brought me on as like a freelancer. So I still work on the lifestyle brands, but just like had a little bit of a bigger role than like an intern. And then April of 2018, they hired me as a junior associate. So working at BuzzFeed was really fun. Just working on those lifestyle brands. I got to help do like a product launch for Goodful at Macy's, and like just all these different partnerships we would do with Tasty and things like that. So it was definitely really fun and really helped me, develop those skills and like work with a social media team. But after a while, for me at least, like working on the same 3 brands kind of started to get a little repetitive and just not as exciting. Like after a while, it was just like, okay, like I think I've learned everything I can here. So I had a friend from BuzzFeed who worked at the social media agency DMM, where I'm at now, spoiler. And so she told me that they were hiring, and I applied for a job there. And it turns out too that my internship boss from the first agency actually worked at this company as well. So kind of had my foot in the door a little bit there, and I applied for the job, and DMM rejected me at first. And then a month later, they interviewed me again and they hired me. And I was very hesitant to work at an agency because I always heard like agencies were just so competitive and cutthroat, and this isn't like it at all. Both the agencies that I have experience at, like the internship and then where I'm at now, definitely not super cutthroat, which is nice. But yeah, so I've been at this social media agency for 3 years in January. I work on mainly TV shows, but the agency does stuff for movies, celebrities, influencers. We do like comics, video games, like we basically touch a little bit of everything. But yeah, so for me, I work on our TV and streaming teams. So I mainly work on shows for like I worked on Netflix, TBS. The main one I'm working on right now are shows for HBO Max. But yeah, so that's kind of how I got to where I am today. Definitely, it's super fun. Social media marketing, again, like I never thought that this would be my career or that this even could be a career. And I think it's definitely more of a career in the past 5 years, if anything. But yeah, so that's just a little bit about me. I think if anyone has any questions about the field, happy to answer.
I have a question. So what social media platform do you use most to market on?
So it's a little bit between Instagram and Twitter. Facebook honestly is just kind of slowing down a lot. We very rarely use Facebook. So it just kind of depends on the campaign. So like right now, like we are more snarky on Twitter, and we kind of can do like first looks, and Twitter's nice because you get like instant audience feedback, because people are very vocal on Twitter. But Instagram definitely, I've noticed through multiple campaigns, is like the one that grows the largest and quickest. So I think it's definitely kind of split between Instagram and Twitter, but we do see bigger audiences on Instagram. And yeah, Instagram too has just kind of been like pivoting a little bit to video. So we've kind of been like changing that. But yeah, I hope I answered your question. Like TikTok too is definitely becoming like a really quick platform for marketing. Some campaigns use a lot, some don't, but TikTok's definitely an up and comer as well, or it already has been.
Do you have any advice on preparing for the interview process?
Sorry, can you repeat that?
Do you have any advice on preparing for the interview process, especially for marketing majors and stuff?
Yeah, definitely. So especially for like if you're interested in doing social media marketing or just marketing in general, a question I was constantly asked is like, what other things that like other brands or other TV shows are doing that you think is working really well or not working? So I think it's really important just to keep up with current trends and like think of specific accounts that you think are doing really well. Interviewers like to know that you're kind of like staying on top of like trends and knowing like what's working, and like maybe too sometimes they'll ask like, oh, what's an account you don't think that's doing well, and then maybe they'll have you like provide suggestions of, well, maybe they could be doing this or posting this type of content. So I think just really keeping up with what's going on, and just having specific examples is really helpful.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
I have a question. What is your current position? Are you more on like the content creation side or the strategy side?
So I'm more on strategy side. So my title is just social media manager. So basically what my like day-to-day looks like is we have our clients. So right now I'm working on a show for HBO Max. And it's just kind of coming up with like the content calendar, just like what kind of things we want to post, what if there's any like key beats that we want to jump on. Right now for this show too, like we're doing a lot of, it's a superhero show, so we're dealing with a lot of like different comic cons and trying to figure out how we can bring like in like real life experiences in person to social. So it's just a little bit of that. So it's kind of a bit of everything, community management as well. I don't like specifically make like a lot of the creative assets. We have like a team that does all that, which is really nice. But yeah, the biggest thing is just kind of strategizing like what we're gonna do. If there's any holidays we want to jump on, just like making that like weekly content calendar.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Delaney, are there any, you said you were part of Women in Business and a couple other student orgs. Is there anything you learned during your experiences there that have translated into what you're doing now?
I think the thing with Women in Business too, like, and especially like SLM, is just really all about networking. And you know, that's kind of just, I think using those networking skills, like that's really what helped me get my current position, and actually get that foot through the door. So definitely, and like once I was in like when I was in school too, like I was shy, like I didn't like network as much as I should have. But it's definitely important to like network as much as you can, because you never know how it can help you in the future. And like honestly, going to the career fair, that was like always good practice too for me. But yeah, I think just kind of doing that, it would be great. And then I also like for one semester I joined like the psychology club and actually took psychology courses at Bing, like just for fun. But I feel like that helped a lot for marketing as well, like just taking like a general psychology class, because then you kind of see how people think, and that really ties in with marketing.
Jordana, you have a question?
Yes. Hello. So very interesting to hear about your journey, and also incredibly cool to hear that you are in both WHRW and Women in Business, because I'm in both of those as
Yeah.
well. And I wanted to ask you, how are you able to express your personal creativity on a daily basis? And how do you manage being creative and strategic without experiencing too much burnout?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think just with creativity, what's nice about my role is like you can be creative. I think more campaigns, it kind of depends on like how creative you can be. Like some campaigns, like the client is just like, this is the vision, this is what we want, like just meet this. And then other campaigns, like the one I'm currently on, like we can have a lot more fun with it. Like I can Photoshop ridiculous memes and like the client's okay with it. So I think just like having that balance too. It's just like you can be really creative on some campaigns, others not as much, but they usually like pair you up so you can change it a little bit. And just with burnout too, just kind of like time management is such a huge thing. And then sometimes, it could be hard. Like when we have a lot of brainstorms for shows and, you can only come up with so many ideas and that can be a little bit tiring, but it's just like kind of collaborating with other people has helped me a lot too. If I'm just like I just can't think of more ideas or I can't think of this. So that's like definitely helped me a lot, just collaborating with like my coworkers, which is something that I didn't think I would necessarily have at an agency, like really supportive coworkers who help you out. So that's really nice too. But yeah, just like brainstorming is so important, also kind of helping with the creative process. I hope that answers your
Thank you.
question.
It does, yeah. And it was really nice hearing about the collaboration aspect of things. That's something that I really appreciate in most things. So it's nice that that transfers over to professional career.
Yeah, definitely lots of teamwork. And like brainstorming is so important. Like what's nice, because that's how we get our business, is like we'll have a brainstorm and then we'll go to a client and say like, these are all our ideas for a show. And that's kind of fun too, is also like, at least at the agency I'm at, even if like you're not working on specific, like I don't really work on movies. So like an example is like our agency worked on In the Heights and I love the musical. And so it's kind of fun because like even though I wasn't necessarily working on it, I could still kind of like go these brainstorms and have some fun ideas and like even had like 2 ideas like in the campaign. So that's definitely fun too, is like you can kind of do like a little bit of everything, even if like you're not necessarily working on it.
Thank you. I love also hearing you talk about your work because you're so passionate about it, and it's so nice to see that.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, it's definitely, I love my job. And like it's just so fun because it's always changing. Like in the beginning of the year I worked on like a reality competition talent show, and now I'm working on a superhero show, so they couldn't be more different. But it's fun, and just social just always is changing too, which can be challenging but fun. Like for example, Clubhouse came on the scene like a few months ago, and we're like, well, how do we use Clubhouse in all these campaigns? And then a month like Clubhouse died down pretty quickly. So it's definitely always changing, which is really fun.
Delaney, so you talked about you had 2 internships at the same time, and you also took some extra classes so you could graduate early. So you must be somewhat good at time management. How have you honed this skill for your current life?
I think time management was definitely something I struggled with when I first started college, because it was just like, that transition from high school to college can be very stressful. So I think the biggest thing that I do is I love lists, because if I just look at everything I have to do, I get so stressed out and then just like want to shut down. and not do and procrastinate. And obviously that doesn't work. So I think just with time management too, and like definitely something you deal with a lot when it comes to work. And when you have multiple campaigns, like you have to really manage your time well to make sure everything's getting done, all the clients are happy, all that. So definitely, I think just like making lists, making a schedule that works for you is really helpful. And just like staying on top of it and definitely prioritizing like what needs to be done. Because I'll have like, yesterday I had like 5 different client asks. And it's like they want everything kind of quickly. So you just have to like prioritize what's the most important. But yeah, time management skills are very good to have. Especially so like, with your manager too, they don't have to like constantly remind you of things.
Great, thank you.
So what has been your favorite like experience or project from your career so far?
Yeah, so I think my absolute favorite thing, so I worked on last year, I worked on His Dark Materials, which was on HBO Max. I don't know if you guys have heard of the show. I never heard of it before I worked on it. So it was like it was the second season, and client let us kind of have like run with different ideas. So one idea that I had was because like I'm sure like everyone in quarantine was playing Animal Crossing, and the show's a lot about different worlds. And so like different worlds, different islands, like what if we do an Animal Crossing activation where we have the main character from the show, we make like a little Animal Crossing version of them, and they like travel to different islands and brought gifts related to the show, and like we did partnered with influencers. So that was really fun to like make this Animal Crossing activation. And I was able to like tell my friends, I'm like, yeah, I got paid to play Animal Crossing at work today. So that was just something that was very unique for that campaign and was really, really fun. And yeah, just like tying it back to social. Yeah, that was, I think, definitely one of my favorite things. But the campaign I'm on now is really fun because I've never really worked at things like having Comic Cons and things like that. So that's been kind of a challenge to figure out how to do like in-person marketing and like make it an experience on social, but that's been really fun as well. We have San Diego Comic Con coming up in 2 weeks, so definitely have fun stuff planned for that. But just like the unique experiences that you don't get to do every day are really the most fun, especially when clients too kind of let you run with your ideas. And HBO Max is really great at that. They're like, no idea is like too big or too small. Like let's try different things.
I also have one more question. I know this is a little bit not in terms of just marketing in general, but I know in marketing, obviously you have to work with a lot of people and there's a lot of communication between different like departments and stuff. Right now we're doing the Mazda live case for juniors, which you might have participated in. There's a lot of like conflict where like people are not as motivated to participate, and I'm taking more of like the managerial position to like tell people what their deliverables are and stuff. So like as a manager or a social media manager, how do you deal with people that have poor communication or lack skills to work with other people?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I remember that case study. But yeah, definitely too. I was that person in college where like I was like the one who's like, okay, let's pick up the slack. I think the biggest thing is just really being like overly communicative, and just trying to make sure everyone's on the same page. And like it's kind of different from like a group project, but now too, like if someone's not necessarily doing what they need to do, just like I'll kind of be like, hey, I'll try and kind of like assign what everyone does, or like I'll meet with a supervisor and be like, hey, so-and-so's not necessarily pulling their weight, like what can we do to do that? And they're usually like good about that. But yeah, you do have to kind of deal with people like that sometimes. So I think the biggest advice is just over communicate, and like sometimes you do have to pick up the slack. It just unfortunately how it is sometimes. But I think just again, communicate as much as you can. Even if you feel like you're sounding so repetitive, because I've definitely been there where I've told the person like 5 times, like, hey, can you do this? Hey, can you do this? And just kind of being patient with it. But I know it's definitely a struggle, and unfortunately, you know, working with group projects, you do that a lot in person. But I think, you know, with jobs too, it's like people are more, at least from I sound, from like being like doing school projects and then doing like projects like at work, it's like people at work are like more focused on things like that. Ultimately, they're being paid to be there to do these projects. So, you know, they're hopefully it's not as bad. But it just depends on the rush. But yeah, I just recommend communicating as much as you can. And unfortunately, sometimes you just have to pick up the slack, but at the end of the day, like the job does need to be done. I don't know if that's helpful at all, but like I've been in your shoes, so like I totally get it, how frustrating it can be. But I do think like once you're actually like in a job, it does get a little bit better.
Thank you, I appreciate it. And just to follow up, you obviously just said that you could obviously bring it to somebody who's higher up, like a supervisor, about somebody not doing their part. At what point in time do you escalate it to a supervisor? Because to a certain extent, you're looked at as a manager and you should be kind of dealing with that. So when you decide to pick up the work on your own or escalate it to a supervisor?
Yeah, so pretty much, I mean, obviously, like the first, I don't go to a supervisor right away. I'm like, hey, so and so's not doing this. So sometimes if it's like little things, like sometimes I'll just like pick up the slack. But if it's something that's constantly repetitive, then I'll bring it up with the supervisor, just because like we have in our campaigns too, like at the beginning of the campaign, we have like a Google Doc of like, here's what each person's responsible for. And so sometimes like it's easier to like, I'll just do it if I have the spare time. You know, and sometimes I do that now too. If someone's like really overwhelmed with work, maybe they're supposed to be doing something, but I have free time, like I'll jump in and just do it, just to help them out. But yeah, I actually did have this issue where one of my coworkers was just not getting things done in like a timely manner, and it was just repetitive. So I did bring it up to the supervisor, or what I would do is like, we have a Slack channel for work. That's like a huge thing. If you can like use Slack at all, or just like no Slack, use it a lot in the workplace. I would just like maybe say, hey, like I would just like put tasks in that public chat and be like, hey, like I'm gonna work on this. Can you work on this? So then like there's more of like a track record to it. But like if a coworker is obviously overwhelmed with other projects and I can jump in, like I'll definitely do that. But if it's just they were assigned this role and they're not doing it, and it's like I'm overwhelmed and having to do their work on top of that, then that becomes an issue.
Thank you.
So you mentioned earlier when you were going over like how you got to where you are now, the different struggles and such that you faced in the process of trying to find jobs and trying to find work. And so I'm wondering, based off of what you know now, what advice would you give to someone who's just really interested in getting into your field?
Yeah, I think definitely take it like for interviewing, like I'm a very nervous interviewer. So I think just really practicing is really good ahead of time, and just having a solid resume too. You know, something that I learned like kind of now that I'm like in jobs, and like when I was first applying, it's like I always thought like a person was actually reading my resume, and most of the time it's a computer reading your resume. So biggest advice too when it works on resume is like going to the job site and looking at the job description and trying to include those keywords in your resume. And like cover letter too, like that's really important. I think sometimes it's easy just to do like those quick applies and just like send the same resume, but tailoring it to that job is really helpful. I think that's like something definitely should do. And yeah, and just to like, just being knowledgeable and confident with your skills. I think that's something I struggled with too. It's like starting out, I'm like, oh, like I don't know anything. And it's like, no, you do know some things. Like, you know, obviously you don't know everything. You're still very new, but like the things you know, like be confident about that. Like, you know, like, you know, these things, you're here for a reason. Just like really talk about those skills that you have and just really own it and be like, I know I'm good at this, but I'm really open to learning about this. I want to learn more about this. And at jobs too, I think kind of coming in with like, this is what I want to learn at this job, especially as an entry level too, because that's really such a big learning position. And just like how you want to grow in your career and things like that are really good, but just being passionate about it as well. With BuzzFeed, something that my managers told me is like a lot of people who interviewed for that position, like they didn't really care about the lifestyle brands. They're just like, oh, BuzzFeed, like I like the Try Guys and like things like that. And it's like, okay, that's great, but that's not really what this role is for. So just really knowing what you're applying for and really showing that passion, I think will definitely really help you.
I just want to thank you for sharing your answers so thoroughly. I feel like I've gained so much from your insights. One thing I did want to ask you though was I personally am not in SOM. I'm not a marketing major or a business major. I'm actually in Harvard. I'm studying geophysics and philosophy of politics. So how important do you think the specific degree you get is in these interviews, and does that really impact your degree of success with interviews?
Yeah, I think honestly, you don't need to be like a specific major to get into this field. Like all my coworkers, like we've talked about this, like what's everyone's major? And I'm like the only business major. People come from like everywhere. Like journalist majors, PR majors. One person's like was a science major, like philosophy major. So really for this field, like you don't have to like necessarily have that marketing degree. I think the biggest thing is just like coming in knowledge and just being like knowledgeable of the field. And then just taking advantage too of like the resume workshops, the Fleischman, and like all those as well. I think those will really help you. But I don't think you need to like worry about your major to go into this field. Like, you know, yeah, because everyone's really has such different backgrounds. So yeah, I think just being knowledgeable of the field and like getting experience through an internship or things like that, because internships aren't going to be like, oh, you're not a marketing major, like you're not going to get this internship, you know. So that is like definitely a benefit, is that you don't have to have a specific degree to get into this field.
I have another question. I heard you mention earlier that you use Photoshop to create some of the content for your campaigns. Are there any other software programs or just technical skills that are valuable for your career?
Yeah. So like Photoshop, like, I mean, I do not do very intense Photoshop. I am not very good at it. I just do very basic Photoshop for memes. But one thing that we do use a lot is like Keynote. PowerPoint is good. We actually use, because like we don't have Photoshop at work, at least like our designers do, but like we don't. So I just like sometimes use Keynote to design different assets. PowerPoint's really good. Definitely knowing Google, Google Drive, like Google Sheets, Google Slides, like all of that. Like we use Google for everything. So being knowledgeable of that. And two, something that kind of helped me, like when I was at SOM, we had to take like Excel classes, and I honestly just like, I'm still not great with Excel, but just like knowing some like more basic skills, like people come to me with their Excel questions, and even though I'm not like an Excel expert, like it's kind of nice to have that like one up, I guess, like, oh, I understand Excel. So just knowing like basic how Excel works is really helpful. Yeah, I think those are the major things. And then something that like kind of hard to do before you start a job, but just like understanding how analytics work. That's been a big thing, and that's something you learn more like in an internship or in a job than you could necessarily now. But we definitely use like social analytics a lot to like report to our clients like how things are doing. Yeah, those are like the biggest programs we use. Yeah, just like definitely Google stuff is like very important, and at least for my company, like that's how we do everything. But yeah, just knowing how to make a good PowerPoint is really good too, because sometimes you have to make a million decks for clients. So like we have one deck that's like 80 pages and we have to keep adding to it. So it's just good just to know like how to format and make a PowerPoint look nice.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Thank you for that insight. Just to build up what he said, I have a follow-up question as well. But on the hard like programs that you use, do you use any like customer like relationship management programs, or do you use any like campaign management programs, or how does your firm that you currently work for like organize all your information?
Yeah, so we don't necessarily use like campaign management software or anything like that. Honestly, like the biggest things we use are the back ends of social platforms. So like Twitter scheduling, Twitter analytics, same with like Creator Studio for Facebook and Instagram. That's like where we get most of our back end stuff. But honestly, like all of our content planning, things like that, we just like have in Google Drive. That's like where we just organize everything, where we have internal planning, we have doc spaces for like that are client facing, but that's where we have most of our planning. So we don't use anything super advanced. I know some other teams do have like reporting software that they use, but like for our campaigns, like we just pull from the back end of platforms. So again, like once you get in that job, or like if you do have like even just like creating a business page, just like your own random, like it doesn't have to be even a profile, like just like an empty page, just to see what the platform insight back end kind of looks like. That could be good to know. But yeah, we don't use anything like super crazy. It's just, again, like everything lives in Google Drive.
Thank you. That makes sense, because I know a lot of firms, like bigger firms, might use like programs in order to organize with a lot of people. But it's definitely probably very valuable to learn like all the analytics and like the advertising strategies that the different social medias use. But just to follow up on like, instead of the hard skills, like coming out of school, what are the soft skills you found most important? Because I know in marketing, like leadership and communication, teamwork is very big. That's like why I added like leadership and consulting as like another minor. Do you see any other big soft skills that really helps you on a day-to-day?
Yeah. I think just the biggest thing, and I kind of mentioned this before, but just like being aware of what's going on in the world of social. Just having that knowledge is really helpful, and just like trends. And like for TV show, like you don't have to watch every show and pay attention to like the big things. Like for example, Stranger Things Day. Our clients like, oh, I like that they had this schedule for this. Like, let's do something similar to that. So I think just really keeping up to date with things, and there's a lot of social media blogs you can follow that talk about like what's coming up. So just like focusing on that, and like what I think you like that social channels are doing, you don't like, but you know, I just like, I'm on social media all day for work, but I still like to go at night just to kind of see what's going on. But I think that's just super important. And then just like some other soft skills too, just like we do a lot of reporting. So I use a lot of math sometimes, just like basic math, nothing crazy, but yeah, so just like kind of, you do have to do like a lot of math sometimes. a lot of like writing skills, just like keep sharp on those. Just things like that, like basic skills. Like writing is a huge thing that I do day to day. So just making sure, like, you know, when you're writing, just like very focused on like making sure there's no typos, no things, anything like that. Like I use Grammarly a lot, just to make sure my captions are all good. But yeah, those are just like the basic thing. The basic thing is just like writing math and then just like staying on top of what's going on in social.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Jordana.
Hello again. So I was wondering if there's a specific piece of knowledge that you acquired over the years that you would really like to share, or something that would have helped you earlier on to be better equipped with the transition from being in college and going into the professional world?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing too, and I kind of brought this up a little bit before, but kind of that transition, it's like when you go into that entry level job, at least for me, I don't know things. Like I'm very new to this, and just really trying to have confidence and just being so eager to learn everything and not being shy and afraid to speak up. Like I know when I started my first job, like I'm definitely shy at first. And so going into meetings with all these people who are so experienced was pretty daunting at first. But don't be afraid to like share your ideas. Like no idea is bad. Like people are so excited to hear ideas, and even ideas I'm like, this is stupid, maybe I shouldn't share this, like people loved and we've actually used. So just really having confidence when you get into that job. Yeah, I think just not being afraid to speak your mind, don't be afraid to ask questions. Like I would be afraid because I wanted to be like, oh, like I know what I'm doing. Like I don't want to ask a lot of questions. I don't want them to think like I don't know anything. But it's so good to ask as many questions as you have. And that's just something I've learned along the way too. Now I'm like not afraid to ask questions. Like even questions I like know the answer to, I'm like, let me just confirm just to make sure everyone's on the same page. So just don't be afraid to speak up, honestly. It can be daunting at first, but definitely I know it's appreciated. And like even when I train junior managers, just having them ask like so many questions is, I appreciate it because it's like I'd rather be on the same page and not have confusion.
Thank you. I'm going to try to always keep that in mind. It's a very good thing to have.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, because that's just something I struggled with a lot because I was just shy and I'm like, I don't want to come off as not knowing anything, or I don't want them to think that, but people don't. Like they'd rather you be asking a million questions or sharing your ideas. Like just make sure you're being heard.
Okay, thank you. And it's also so great to hear like from the other end of like the person who's receiving those questions as well, because you experience both things of asking and answering those questions. So it's nice to hear that like you want to answer them and you like people asking those questions.
Yeah, definitely. And it definitely saves confusion and stuff down the road as well.
So I have two little questions. Have you ever used Canva, or do you use Canva, and what's your opinion on it? And then also, do you ever get tired of going on social media after working on it and then using it for leisurely purposes? And what do you do to break with that? Because you do have to work on it.
Yeah, so starting with Canva, honestly, the thing I mostly use Canva for is my resume, just because I have really good templates and it helps me like my resume stand out a little bit. I mostly, like some people use Canva a lot for their campaigns with creating assets versus I mostly use Keynote, or for Instagram stories, people use Canva, but I'm super like knowledgeable with it. I think it's just personal preference. There's so many different things that you can use. So you don't have to like be married to one site, I guess. And like for Instagram stories too, like there's this app I use called Unfold. And that's super easy to make stuff. So I think it just depends on what you think, like what platform works best for you. But I don't think you need to like have like a Canva Pro membership or anything like that. And then social media, it's different because when I'm on social media at work, I'm just usually logged into like the client's social media, and not necessarily my own. Like sometimes I'll like go on Facebook or I'll like scroll through like Instagram, but I'm mostly logged into theirs. So when I go on social media like after work, it's like my own personal one. So it's a little bit different. But yeah, I mean, sometimes just like being on social media, even if you don't work in it, it's just exhausting. And I don't go on it like all super long after work, but it's just different because you're not like on your own social media all day. So you're seeing different things. So it's like, that's kind of like the break up of it. I mean, obviously I go on my own social media during the day sometimes, but that's like not what I'm spending all my time on.
Yeah.
But yeah, social media burnout, it can be hard. And like one thing that is hard too is like current events. That can really pivot our strategy a lot, just given the current state of the world. So like for example, with last summer, there was all the Black Lives Matters protests, and the show I worked on, it was Married to Medicine LA, which is like a primarily African American cast. And so we kind of had to pivot our strategy, be like, how can we have these current conversations? Like this is, you know, affecting our audience, and we want to have these honest conversations. So we really like tapped into talent and said, and they kind of like did podcast episodes just talking about the movement and you know, just the everyday experience. And that really kind of was a way for us to use our social to have these conversations. So definitely like that can be hard too, is sometimes like if these current events like, okay, well, we were gonna post this, like I had a premiere the day of the Capitol riots this year. And obviously that was the main conversation on social. So we had to be like, okay, how can we still kind of promote this, but be sensitive to current events? So that can be hard too. And just when there are these negative events, being on social all day and just constantly seeing the news can be difficult. And my job is like really good at like, you need to take a breather and take a break, then you're definitely allowed to. But just giving current events too, like it's okay to step away from social for a little bit because it can be a lot sometimes. And just like being able to be like, okay, this is the current climate, like let's just step back from this a little bit too. So yeah, that's definitely one of the like, that is like a little bit of a burnout, just like seeing the same sad news over and over again, but just having the conversations where we can.
Delaney, so you work for a lot of modern companies, like BuzzFeed is relatively newer, younger, and the current organization I think is also in a similar boat. What's been the craziest interview question you've gotten? Because I know sometimes some of the younger, more modern companies throw in like a curveball once in a while. So I'm just curious.
Oh man, I'm trying to think. I'm trying to remember like one, I feel like there's one at BuzzFeed, but like I can't even remember what it was because it was like 4 years ago. I mean, yeah, the biggest thing is like, I think with these interviews with these younger companies too, like the people who interviewed me were also young. So we just kind of like went off on like random conversation tangents about whatever. I remember like at BuzzFeed too, like it wasn't necessarily a question, it was just like talking about all the food they have at the office. And then like the person interviewing me was like, oh my gosh, there's an edible arrangement out here. And she started freaking out in the middle of the interview because there was an edible arrangement outside. So just like things like that, just the tangents you go on because like the people are younger and like it is more conversational sometimes, and just like talking about TV shows too. It's just fun, just like talk about what they're doing there. Like sometimes you're like, this show's not doing well, and then it's like bashing their social sometimes. and just like talking about what they can do to improve it. Yeah, I can't think of any like specifically crazy
That's okay.
interview questions. I did have one job application though for it was like social media for a real estate company that made me rank like what's worse, like a poisoned water supply or like someone getting tortured.
Oh,
It was like you had to rank all these things. And I'm just like, what does this have to do with social media for a real estate company? Like, what the heck?
huh.
I didn't
Interesting.
get an interview because I didn't even finish it. I'm like, this is too weird.
I was just gonna ask that, like, did that turn you off from the job? Because you didn't feel like it was a good fit?
Yeah, I was just like, what is the point of this? Like, I don't need, it was like a weird ethical test. And I'm like, I feel like this doesn't have to do with anything. Like, this doesn't show my skill set or anything like that. But yeah, it was just this like, and it's for real estate. I'm like, what does this have to do? What's poisoning the water supply have to do with a real estate social media job? So that one was a weird application. There are sometimes weird applications, but most of the time they're normal.
So that's just to go and show you, like, even though you're interviewing and you want a job, it's also about you finding out about that company too. So you really want to make sure that that's also a good fit for you, because if they do something weird like that and you morally feel, I don't know, like it's not a good fit, then it probably isn't.
Yeah, definitely. And like there, you know, my more of like this isn't my experience, but like my friend's experience too. Like she's interviewed a company, got job offers, and she's just like, I just don't feel the vibe here. Like there's just something kind of off. Like I don't want to bother with this. And like, you know, you don't have to accept the first offer you get if you don't feel it's right, because you don't want to like be miserable. Like you want to, you know, when especially your first job, like you want to be eager to learn, like you really want to be there and you want to like learn really important skills. And like if you're there and the job just isn't it, then it's just like you kind of like, oh god, like what am I doing? But yeah, don't be afraid to be a little bit picky as well. Like there were jobs I'd apply for, like I was like, oh, let me apply for jobs, and then the pay was like $12 an hour. It was like under minimum wage for LA. I'm like, I don't want a job that's paying this little. So yeah, don't be afraid to like be a little selective for sure.
One more question real quick. It's not as applicable to you because I'm pretty sure you just got your bachelor's for marketing. What do you see as a benefit to continuing to do 1 year extra to getting your master's in terms of the marketing field? Because I know you can just go straight into a managerial position, but obviously it's not guaranteed. And you can do that you can achieve many of the same positions with the bachelor's. It's just the master's gives you like kind of like a little boost up. So what are your opinions on it?
Yeah, I think honestly, like getting a master's degree is great and it can definitely open more doors for you. For me personally, I just didn't necessarily want to go that route because I just wanted to like enter the job field, and I graduated early too, just to like finish. But I think too, like there's a lot of skill. Like I've had friends who've gotten their masters, and like they were in SOM and then they did that like 1 year program to get their master's degree, and definitely helped them also to like realize, okay, you have more time to like really, you know, you got to learn more skills in a master's program, and you kind of see like, okay, maybe this is what I want to do. But I do think it like opened more doors and like more networking opportunities. It just wasn't the route that I wanted to go on. But I think if you want to do a master's degree, like that's awesome. Like definitely take advantage of like all the different things you can learn and things like that. It'll help. It won't hurt.
I have to head out to class, but I just wanted to thank you so much for sharing all of your experiences and answering all my questions so well. I feel like this is such a valuable experience for me, and thank you so much for all of it.
Yeah, of course. Thank you guys for coming out. Yeah, if you want to connect with me, feel free to add me on LinkedIn. If you have any other questions, you can message me on there. I'm pretty responsive, but yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, of course.
Any other questions? You guys good?
I guess I'll have one kind of like closing question, I guess. So with all the experience that you have had, what do you think is the biggest thing that you gained from your time at Binghamton University?
I think it being the biggest thing was like, I didn't necessarily know what I wanted to do as a career. And I didn't think that social media marketing would even be a career that I could go into. So I think that's definitely like learning like just all these different opportunities that are out there. Like I even took like a social media marketing course at Bing, and that really helped me too. Be like, that helped me learn a lot about like the different platform insights and things like that. So those are really good as well, just kind of like helping me figure out like what I wanted to do as a career, especially in business too, because a lot of the business classes I took, I'm like, I don't necessarily want to go down this route. So that was good too, just to kind of like figure out what I want to do, but also like definitely take advantage of the resume services, because that helped me so much. I'm sure I probably had like a million resume edits from, Fleishman, the SOM, Career Center. But yeah, definitely like take advantage of the Career Center, really sharpening your resume, and then also doing practice interviews. That helped a lot too, because especially again for me, like I'm a nervous interviewer, so doing those practice interviews really helped me a lot because it kind of helped me get like a little more comfortable, and you kind of start to see what questions people are going to ask. But yeah, definitely can't recommend resume services enough because that really helped me. And now I like love doing resumes, and I like do all my friends' resumes. So yeah, just definitely take advantage of the resources, like networking, go to the like career fair and other networking events. Like these events are so great to hear from alumni who are in these career paths you're interested in. Yeah, that's just the biggest thing I think. Like also just enjoy it because I miss Binghamton so much.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Delaney, for your time. I know you're very busy, and for all your insights. And yeah.
Great, yeah, thanks everyone for coming out. But yeah, again, just if you want to, you can just add me on LinkedIn, just Delaney Ratzky. If you have any follow-up questions, just message me on there. I'm happy to help. Again, I know this is such a new field. So yeah, happy to answer any questions you guys have there.
All right,
Thank
great.
you so much.
Friday.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Have a good
Thank you.
weekend.
Yes, have a good weekend, guys.
Bye.
You as well.